Welcome to the Space for Grace podcast, a place where you can come as you are, hear genuine conversations about women's holistic health, and leave educated, inspired, and encouraged about your health and fitness journey. Get ready to find freedom to flourish in your physical, mental, and spiritual health. I'm your host, MK, and I'm so glad you're here. Welcome to the Space for Grace. Hey guys, welcome back to the Space for Grace podcast. I'm MK, and this is going to be another solo episode, and I'm going to talk about the basics of nutrition. Basically, what I would go over with one of my clients in kind of a first intro to nutrition session. So, the main thing you need to know about the topic of nutrition is that it is highly controversial, and that is because everyone is unique. So I'm a certified personal trainer, and then I got my specialization in fitness nutrition. I've had a lot of experience with my own nutrition, working through food sensitivities and insulin resistance with PCOS, and I'm now in school at the Integrative Nutrition Health Coach School. And so I'm still learning a lot about nutrition, but this is not medical advice, and I'm not a registered dietitian. So everything I'm going to say is general advice, and everyone is unique. So the main thing I want you to know is the idea of bio-individuality. Bio-individuality is basically the principle that each human is unique. And so what's going to work for one person might not work great for another person. And that is so applicable to nutrition. And one of the hot topics right now is gut health and the gut microbiome. And it's this new science that we're just now exploring on how the gut microbiome affects people's digestion, ability to lose weight, fatigue, all sorts of things. And we know our gut, creates immunity and affects mood, like the brain-gut connection. So there is so much that goes into this that is really just unique to each person. So if you've ever wondered, like, what is the magic diet? Like, what's the best diet? Why can this person do great on carnivore and this person do great on vegan, right? And why is there so many conflicting advice about nutrition out there in the world? And people get so defensive of their way of eating. Like, vegans could say that veganism is the only way. Carnivore people could say carnivore is the only way. But the truth is, everyone's different, and what's going to work for one person might not work for you. So there's not one size fits all, one diet is best. These foods are good, these foods are bad. No, nothing like that. So that's the main thing I want you to know is take a deep breath, take a sigh of relief. You are unique, and you should be the expert on your health. Like, you can learn to tune into your body, tune into your intuition, listen to your hunger cues, listen to what your body's telling you, and most likely you just doing your own little elimination diet and figuring out what foods do best for you versus other foods. That's really going to be the best way for you to figure out what nutrition advice is best for you. There's a lot of trial and error involved. You can work with a functional medicine practitioner and get labs and testing on your gut to see if you have food intolerances or sensitivities that you're unaware of and things like that. And that is obviously super helpful and kind of a shortcut to figuring out what foods may be good or bad for you. But if you can't afford that right now, you can do an elimination diet and just through trial and error figure out what foods you're maybe not able to digest as well at this point. And the other thing is, you may be sensitive to some foods now because of how your gut is now, but there are ways to introduce new foods and then become able to eat those foods that used to give you problems. Either by just slowly introducing that food to your gut because it's been cut out of your diet for so long, so you're not used to it, or through other ways of healing your gut and feeding your good gut bacteria so that it can handle more foods than it currently can. So I would definitely seek out a functional medicine practitioner if that's something you're interested in doing. Okay, all of those things out of the way, I can jump into my generally good advice for most everyone that I work with on a one-on-one level. Um, so the amount of food you consume is just as important as the quality of the food you consume and vice versa. So this is another controversial thing. You'll see people on one end of the extreme where they say it only matters that you eat clean, healthy, organic, whole foods most of the time or all of the time. And then you have the other extreme that says as long as it fits into your calories and your macros, you can eat anything that you want. You can eat, donuts and pizza and brownies. And as long as you're in a calorie deficit, you'll lose weight. So those are the kind of two extremes. We need to find a good balance, a good middle ground, because there is truth to both sides. You want to be eating high quality, nutrient dense whole foods 80 to 90% of the time. And then you also want to be able to enjoy your comfort foods, foods that bring you enjoyment, food just that nourishes your soul and not just your body, because we don't want to become obsessive or restrictive or feel like we're missing out on things. And the more you cut things out and feel like you can't have those foods and those foods are bad, then the more likely you are to binge and get into that restrict binge cycle or just develop some sort of eating disorder. And that is absolutely not what we want. If you do have an eating disorder, you need to be working with a professional that, like a registered dietitian and and a counselor that can help you work through that and find freedom from that mindset. But I want us to find this balance between, yes, I want to nourish my body well, which means eating a lot of plants, a lot of fruits and vegetables, some high quality meats, healthy fats. Like my body needs that to feel its best, to avoid getting a chronic illness like insulin resistance. Um, but at the same time, there is a time and a place for foods that just make us feel happy, right? So for me, my like girl dinner once a week might be sushi, it might be some gluten-free chicken nuggets or a gluten and dairy-free pizza, but I still don't eat the gluten and dairy because I know I'm intolerant and sensitive to it. I know it'll make me feel horrible, but I still treat myself to foods that aren't perfect and high quality because that makes me happy. It's as simple as that. And then I don't beat myself up or I don't feel guilty or bad about it the next day. I just eat it. I trust my body to do its thing and I move on with my life. And a lot of my food freedom has come from actually understanding how the body works and how when you build muscle, you're burning more calories just existing at rest the rest of the day. So the higher your lean muscle mass to your body fat percentage, the higher your metabolism is going to be. And so, and just understanding how many calories my body needs to just function at a baseline level is crazy, and how many carbs we need for our brain to function properly. Like I found a lot of freedom in learning about those things so that I don't have the mindset of, oh, I need to be eating 1,200 calories a day. No, like, no, we know that's not healthy. We know that's not good for us. So for me, learning and understanding what healthy looked like for me, what weight does my body feel its best and its healthiest at? And not comparing that to what someone else's healthiest weight is to them, right? Um, and then also just learning to trust my body to know what it needs to do with the food that I take in. So When I was diagnosed with PCOS, I started learning about the Build Your Plate method. And this is the intuitive eating side of nutrition that I use with a lot of my clients that don't need to track or don't want to track for different reasons. And I definitely think that this is a great option for most people, especially people who are just trying to maintain and just live a generally healthy life. And the Build Your Plate method is basically just you eat 3 meals a day, maybe a snack or two, and you build your plate with a fourth of your plate protein, a fourth of your plate carbs, and half your plate your fiber, your non-starchy veggies, antioxidants from fruit, things like that. And then you have one serving of a healthy fat, whether that is the oil that you cook in, or some avocado, or some nuts, or whatever, any healthy fat. And that's the Build Your Plate method. And that's the method I started using when I was diagnosed with PCOS. I cut out gluten and dairy because I found out that those were not helping me, not serving me, and I was very intolerant to them. And so I removed those and I used the Build Your Plate method for all of my meals to make sure I was getting some protein so that my blood sugar would stay balanced, and then having some healthy fat and actually eating more. I felt like I was eating more because I was eating all the time because I was always hungry because I was eating all these whole foods rather than processed junk food that's high in calorie. But you eat it, you have a lot of energy, but then you crash really hard, right? So it's that like spike and then crash. But with the whole foods, it's more of a steady energy throughout the day. So I would use the Build Your Plate method. For PCOS, for me, I went with the low glycemic index carbs like sweet potatoes and brown rice, things like that, because of my insulin resistance and not wanting to spike my blood sugar and feel that like anxiety and jitteriness after having a high amount of carbs. Because the high carbs would also like make me feel bloated and sluggish and things like that. So most of the time I had the lower glycemic index carbs. And for dessert, I would have dark chocolate. And I love dark chocolate. It's the best. So, but I'll still have other desserts. Like I'll have some gluten and dairy-free brownies. They're so good. The ones I make are so good. Or, there's ways to make really good gluten dairy-free pancakes. Like there's you don't have to miss out on any food just by cutting out gluten or dairy. And that just because I cut out gluten and dairy doesn't mean I cut out like a whole food group, especially gluten. I guess dairy is a whole food group, but as far as me needing to cut out gluten, that healed me so much, helped me so much to just so many of my PCOS symptoms went away from cutting out gluten. And I've learned to not feel bad about that or guilty about cutting out foods because I know that that's what served me best. Again, bioindividuality. Like you can use your intuition and figure out what's best for you and not worry about what other people are going to say. So, the Build Your Plate method is great for anyone though. And even if you have a donut as your carb, you're still going to have some protein and some fiber and some healthy fat to go along with that. So it's going to be a well-balanced meal. You won't have as much of an energy crash because you'll have balanced out the carbs with other foods. And you don't have to be guilty about eating a donut. And later, like you're not going to binge and beat yourself up for having a bad food and ruining whatever you think you've ruined. Like, no, just have the cookie, eat a healthy meal with it, and that's that. Like, there's no guilt, there's no shame. You don't have to spiral into a binge because you ruined your diet. Like, we've got to get rid of that mindset. We've got to get rid of that mentality. And I wasn't even planning on going on that rant, but it needs to be said over and over again. So use the 80/20 rule. 80% of the time, try to eat your healthiest. And if you can't buy organic, that's okay. You could try to buy the Dirty Dozen organic and everything else not worry about. You can also soak your produce in water with baking soda or water with white distilled vinegar and soak it in that for a little while, and that will help get off a lot of the pesticides and stuff like that. So that's a good option if you're on a budget like me. But you want to be able to honor your body's hunger cues. So when you start to have a craving for a food, just tune in, become aware. Like, are you actually hungry? Are you thirsty? Does your body need movement? Are you bored? Are you feeling lonely? Like, if you struggle with overeating or binge eating or emotional eating, just being emotionally aware and then finding other healthy coping mechanisms to replace the eating habit. And so you have to become aware of why you're doing it, what that emotion is, where it's coming from, what's triggering it, how to heal that at the root cause. So it's a lot of actually mental work and inner healing to be able to have a healthy relationship with food and not use food as a reward or as a coping mechanism because you're tired or lonely or bored or unfulfilled, whatever it is. Work on actually healing the root cause of that emotion and what's causing that emotion, and maybe replacing loneliness with calling a friend, going out, like take yourself on a date, go to a cute coffee shop, maybe watch a fun movie, journal, like, or get out of the house, go on a walk. Like, if you don't go to the gym, start going to the gym. Like, there's so many healthy coping mechanisms that you can use to replace emotional eating with. So, but then healing that emotion or that trigger with a therapist would be amazing to do as well. So you want to be able to have balance. You want to be able to be in control. Like, okay, I'm really craving a cookie. Am I going to choose to have the cookie? Or since I'm not hungry, am I going to choose to do something else? And if you choose to do something else, great. If you choose to have the cookie and just enjoy it for what it is and not beat yourself up about it, then do that. And like, no, it's okay to feel full. Like, you don't have to beat yourself up for having the cookie, even though you weren't hungry, and then you feel kind of full. At least you knew what you were gonna feel like. You knew what you were getting yourself into. So don't beat yourself up about it if you choose to have the cookie when you're full and then you feel full. Like, it's fine. Tomorrow's a new day. And tomorrow you don't need to restrict. You don't need to skip breakfast. Your body knows how to deal and how to use the fuel you're giving it. So trust your body. Unless you're just overeating all the time, your body's going to be able to maintain, especially if you're like regularly weightlifting, which is why I love weightlifting because it gives me so much food freedom. And I've learned that maybe I feel really full, but I'm going to sleep and in the morning I'm going to wake up and I'm going to feel back to normal and the fullness will go away. And another really cool thing I learned from a food freedom therapist I follow is a lot of times people will say, I feel fat. You can't feel fat. Fat isn't a feeling, it's not an emotion. Maybe you feel full, so say that you feel full. And that's something I've started using that's actually really helped me, is saying, you know what, I feel full. I want to say that I feel fat, but I know that's not true. I just feel full. And that's something that's going to pass. So that's been a really helpful little tip for me. Another thing a lot of people will say is my metabolism is broken. It's just not working. Like, I just look at a piece of cake and I gain weight. Well, what I would say to that is your metabolism has accepted or gotten used to what you have let it to get used to. If you're chronically under eating and like you're eating 1,500 calories every day, your body is smart. It's going to conserve energy and it's going to learn how to survive off getting 1,500 calories a day. And it's going to expect to get 1,500 calories a day. So it's going to burn less and yeah, burn less calories at rest. So you're going to have a lower resting metabolic rate. So it's not that your metabolism is broken, it's that you've trained your metabolism to be lower. And thankfully, there's a way to fix that. And it's called reverse dieting, which means you slowly add back in calories until you get back up to a healthy maintenance caloric intake daily. And the goal is to, your weight may fluctuate a little bit, but if you're slowly adding in the calories, it shouldn't fluctuate a ton. So your goal is to like maintain your weight, maybe up to like gaining 5 pounds. But also if you need to gain weight, then gain the weight. It's good for you. It's fine. And if you're just trying to maintain, then don't be afraid if it goes up 5 pounds because that's nothing. You can lose that so easily. The goal is to get your get your metabolism higher. Then if you do want to go into a cut, you can do it healthfully. And you don't have to cut down to like 1,200 calories to do it. You can cut down from 2,200 calories to 2,000 calories for a short amount of time, lose the weight you're wanting to lose, and then reverse diet back up and maintain that new weight. So that is reverse dieting. So for some of my clients, I do calculate what their ideal maintenance calories and macros would be, and then we see if they're eating close to that or over that or under that. And then from there, we can do what we need to do. A lot of times we need to reverse diet women back up to a maintenance calories before we can then lose weight. Sometimes you can lose weight while reverse dieting. You can lose weight sometimes while intuitive eating and just using the build your plate method and getting more in tune with your body and listening to your body when it's full. To do that, I would say to eat slowly. Make sure you're chewing your food. Make sure you're enjoying it, really thinking about the flavor, savoring your food, and make sure you're eating from a plate, not from like a bag. Right. So put everything on the plate for the build your plate method. And then ideally, you would not be eating while distracted by things like your TV or scrolling on your phone. So being as present as possible while you're eating is how you're going to be able to start listening to your body. And then when you're full, you're not hungry anymore, but you're not uncomfortably stuffed, allowing yourself to be done and be satisfied and move on with the day. And if you're not used to doing that, you can 100% lose weight by starting to do that and eat intuitively. And another cool thing with women and our cycles is that sometimes our cravings will key us into things that we're missing in our diet. So, like during your luteal phase, which I just learned to say luteal correctly, it's not luteal, it's luteal. So during your luteal phase, which is leading up to your period, we typically need like 150 to 300 extra calories. So when you get to that point in your cycle and you feel like you're just starving and so hungry and nothing's satisfying you, know that it's okay to have some extra, like an extra snack or extra food. Because you're hungrier for a reason. Your body needs those extra calories during that phase of the cycle. And it's not an excuse to go crazy and like eat 2 times the calories you normally eat in a day. But it is good to know that and to give yourself grace that you can eat some extra food when you're extra hungry before your period. Like that is normal and it's good and healthy for you. And then a lot of times we'll crave chocolate during this phase or during our period, and that can be because we're lower in magnesium. So double dosing your magnesium supplement leading up to your period and or during your period can be a helpful thing. So it's cool how our bodies are so smart and they know what we need. And if we listen to our body and our cravings, and maybe we don't just go eat potato chips because we know it won't actually make us feel better. But maybe we know we need extra calories, extra carbs. And then maybe you do eat the potato chips because they sound good and they make you happy. That's totally fine too. So, again, it's all about balance. It's all about honoring what would make what do you need the most in the moment? And what are your goals, right? Keeping the promise you make to yourself to reach your goals, and then having grace for yourself for that 20% of the time, and trusting your body. These are the recurring themes here, it seems. Um, if you are tracking calories and macros, stop if it gets obsessive if you feel like you're not listening to your body. Stop if you lose your period or if your hormones start going crazy. And don't track forever. Tracking for a short amount of time, if you don't have an eating disorder or obsessive thoughts around food, can be helpful to teach you portion control, like how many calories are in a 4-ounce chicken breast. But after doing it a little while, you're going to be able to just look at food and kind of tell how much calories and macros is in it. And then you can just move on to the build your plate method. And that's what I like to do because I don't want to track calories and macros the rest of my life. Like that's time consuming and not super healthy to do and to think about all the time. And I don't have these short-term goals of like being a bikini in a bikini competition or whatever, or a bodybuilder competition. Like if you have a short-term goal like that and you need to be a little extreme and do it with a coach, like that's different. But if you're just trying to get to a healthy weight and then stay healthy, then you don't need to track the rest of your life. Like use intuitive eating, just do the build your plate method. And then if you get way off track, you can always come back to it, right? But don't do it forever. Okay. I think that is all of my thoughts on the basics of nutrition for now. I do have some resources on suggested food lists that are listed by what macro is, like protein, carb, fat, etc. I have meal ideas and suggestions. These are resources that all of my clients get access to when they're in my coaching app. So be sure if you're interested in more nutrition coaching and more information about all of this to reach out to me. Send me a DM on Instagram or an email or contact me through my website. I will put all that information in the description for you. But I would love to work with you. So if you are looking for a coach that has this mindset of, I'm not black and white, I'm not one or the other. I'm very balanced and personalize everything to you and to what would be best for you because you are a unique individual and what works for one person might not work for you or be healthy for you or what's best for you. So if that sounds like something you need, please reach out to me and I'd be honored to have a conversation with you. But thank y'all for listening. I hope this was semi-encouraging and helpful. So let me know if it was and what you would like to hear about on the podcast next. Thank you so much for listening to today's episode of the Space for Grace podcast. Be sure to check out the description for any links or resources that were mentioned during this episode. And if you enjoyed this podcast, be sure to subscribe, share with a friend, and leave a review. I hope you're leaving today educated, inspired, and ready to flourish. This is Space for Grace.